Welcome to another live Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi Goslin. It's been a busy day. We've got all sorts of news to discuss. Big options day. Lots of players getting their options picked up, declined, qualifying offers, all that nitty gritty. But we woke up this morning with what was supposed to be just a pretty procedural move. Either LeBron James picks up his $52 million player option or declines it, maybe considers re-signing for something different. Not only does he pick it up as what has been expected, has been reported for maybe a little over a month now, but we got a little bit of a potential domino to fall after with this. I'll read the quote that came with the reporting. So Shams tweets this morning that LeBron's picking up his player option, but we got a statement from Rich Paul, his agent, saying, quote, LeBron wants to compete for a championship. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeannie and Rob and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. Probably the most dramatic opting in statement I've sent since James Harden a couple years ago opted in with the Sixers and then just immediately demanded a trade. So yeah, what do you think is going to happen?
I think these are two parties with fundamentally incompatible priorities, right? The moment the Lakers got Luka, a chance to be competitive for 8 to 10 years opened up. Like, they got Luka and they saw probably what they saw when they signed Shaq in 96, right? Like, they saw that they had just added one of the 5 best players in the league for the next, hopefully, decade or so. And at that point, the needs of the 40-year-old guy kind of just go to the wayside. Like, LeBron doesn't have 8 to 10 years. He might have 8 to 10 months. So if you're him, you're only thinking about the 26 championship and maybe the 27 championship. And the Lakers just fundamentally can't operate that way. So the moment that the Lakers got Luka, this kind of made some degree of sense. But then they were so good after they got him in the regular season that you kind of started to talk yourself into, if they just get a center, if they get somebody to guard the ball, they could really do this for the short term. I think the Minnesota series was such a wake-up call for the Lakers about how far away they are that they kind of looked at this and just said, it'd be nice to win the championship in 26, but really what we're thinking about is 27, 28, 29, 30, and so on. And that means we're not going to put the 2031 first round pick on the table for just anybody. And we're not going to sign Dorian Finney-Smith to like a 4-year mid-level or whatever he's asking for. We're not going to go all in to win right now. And LeBron has no reason to care about any of this. All he cares about is being as good as possible this year. If the Lakers aren't going to do that, and he really is committed to trying to winning another championship, it makes sense for him to do it somewhere else. It's an extreme step, right? We didn't think, there'd been all this reporting for years that his preference would have been to retire as a Laker, but like now that kind of doesn't make sense anymore. Like at least in the past, LeBron was the best path the Lakers had, and now he isn't, right? Like it might have made sense to go all in on LeBron and AD because it's like, what else are you going to do? But with Luka, so many doors open that you have to reconsider that. So I think what's probably going to happen is in the next day or two, Dorian Finney-Smith is going to sign with the Houston Rockets. They're going to sign some middling taxpayer mid-level center. Maybe it's Clint Capella. Maybe it's Brooke Lopez. And then after that, things are going to start to get really interesting because if that's the offseason that the Lakers have and they don't make a substantial trade, they're not contenders. They're not close, not in this Western Conference. And if that's the case, it's probably in everybody's best interest to separate.
So I think that the thing about the two timelines, Luka's timeline and LeBron's timeline, I'm not sure they're like that, like completely, they're not like that different. I think for the most part, I don't think that's necessarily what's impacting this potential decision for a trade. I think it's mostly the fact that it's not looking too good for the Lakers offseason at the moment. Things could change, but just not that they don't have many first round picks to trade. They have one. They don't have really much flexibility below the aprons to do anything. There's not a lot of big men available. The Dorian Finney-Smith situation is also now, that's a whole nother aspect being thrown in a loop. So I just think that it's mostly, like you mentioned earlier, what are the Lakers' chances of competing for a championship? I think the Lakers do want to compete for a championship this year. I'm not sure they care too much about taking certain steps back or avoiding certain shortcuts because they have Luka for the next few years. I just don't think there's, like, we're seeing so many players already off the board, so many trades happening where it feels like there's a lot the Lakers need to overcome right now to get the roster ready for a championship. So if this tells me though, like the opting in, that it might be an indication that he is, if there is a trade he's looking for, that he's looking for it sooner rather than later. Because if it was a sort of situation where he was willing to give the Lakers a shot and see what they could do and see how the season plays out a little bit first before coming to any decision, and maybe that's something they could revisit in the trade deadline, then he could have just opted out because he could resign and he wouldn't be trade eligible anyways until like December. And after that, and then also maybe he signs for something a little different that could have helped the Lakers have a better chance at making a deeper roster. The fact that he picked it up now, he can be traded now, maybe an indication that he is trying to get somewhere sooner than later. And we'll see how the next 48, 72 hours go, where we can get a pretty good indication of where the Lakers really stand in the West. And maybe we'll get an idea of where things will go from there.
Well, the other reason he opts in is because he does have the no trade clause right now. If he had opted out, like, we don't know what terms the Lakers were willing to give him, right? Something that I think we had talked about and a lot of people have talked about was the idea of him offering to do a pay cut like he offered last year. And I think the likeliest scenario now is that the Lakers were not willing to just give him whatever style of contract he wanted to do that. So he might not have gotten a 1+1, right? He might not have gotten an option for the 26-27 season because by all indications, the Lakers want to preserve the chance at max cap space next summer. Now, we'll see if Jaren Jackson is actually available. That's clearly the target. I think we both think it's likelier than not that he will renegotiate and extend in Memphis. So if he couldn't get the no trade clause on a new contract, it made sense for him to opt in. He was never going to opt out, right? There was no cap space out there. He wasn't going to sign outright in Brooklyn, and he wasn't going to do a sign and trade because when you do a sign and trade, the team that acquires you is hard capped at the first apron. So it didn't really make sense. You would have been needlessly hamstringing the team that was getting you. So I know, like, it's kind of funny to say opting in is like the biggest indicator that he's going to leave. And that doesn't mean he's going to, but like, if he wanted to leave, this was the thing to do, unless he was going to sign for like the minimum.
So a couple of months ago, we did Giannis.
We had breaking news.
Oh, let's
Did
see.
we bring this up?
Deandre Ayton
is a free agent?
A buyout? That's early. Wow.
That could be significant for the Lakers.
He must have.
We've been talking about them doing these $33 million matching trades. Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, I definitely anticipated maybe something like around the trade deadline. If he's not traded, that could have ended up in a buyout. Definitely not something like ahead of free agency, unless he gave up something pretty substantial. What does he make? About 35, I want to say.
Oh, what if he's giving up the non-tax mid-level? The Lakers are giving that to him, and then that's why they're letting Finney-Smith go, because they're going to fill center with the non-tax mid-level.
Yeah, no, I mean, that checks out. That makes a lot of sense. The Blazers, they have this insane logjam at center right now with 5 centers. Like, we were talking about how do the Lakers do something where they can try to just package Maxi Kleber and Vincent and Shake Milton, because I was saying, like, I don't see the Lakers why they need to include a guy like Rui or even a pick, because there's no appetite around the league for Deandre Ayton. So with that in mind, yeah, if he let's see, if he took the so like what is it, 14 mil, he makes 35.5. If he give back that much, then the Blazers and have a ton of tax space, a lot more they could do. But I mean, yeah, let's just see who he's going to. I'm sure that's already like
I'm
I'm
sure
sure he's
that's
already
he
got
has an idea. Let's quote unquote, let's say
yeah,
he has an idea. As if that
yeah.
wasn't already done. That sounds like
Wow.
Lakers to me, right? Like, isn't he the quintessential Lakers free agent edition? They love formerly high draft picks that have not panned out where they formerly were, but like they want to take a chance on the talent. And it largely worked out with Rui Hachimura. It didn't with Jackson Hayes. It didn't with Cam Reddish. But this is like very quintessentially Lakers. And like for what it's worth, we know that it's kind of like, a unicorn. But 2021 Deandre Ayton was better than any other option center wise that the Lakers had, right? I know his contract was a little bit ridiculous, but remember, it wasn't Phoenix who gave it to him, it was Indiana. The Pacers were ready to get rid of Miles Turner to give DeAndre Ayton the max. That's how good we thought DeAndre Ayton was a few years ago. If you get him in the right situation, maybe possibly like that could be a little bit enticing. Like maybe if it's a 1 year mid level, like catching lobs from Luca, like maybe he dials it up a little bit. That's a little bit interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just surprised it came this early. I guess he had to have given back like at least the mid
Well,
level,
the
like
reason
that
it came
14
this
mil.
early is because if he wanted to go into somebody's exception, he had to get out before tomorrow. That's why it came this early. And I bet you he did give up something pretty meaningful to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think this really makes a big difference in terms of how LeBron feels about the Lakers if they bring him in?
It shouldn't, but knowing LeBron, I think there's a chance that it might. Because think about what last year he was willing to give up the pay cut for. It was like all famous dudes who weren't as good as he thought they were, right? It was Jonas Valanciunas, who was bad last year. It was Klay Thompson, who's like not Klay Thompson anymore. DeMar DeRozan, who's not DeMar DeRozan anymore. And even his peak was not a player that made much sense next to LeBron. And then James Harden, who I just don't think was ever really feasible. I feel like LeBron might look at Ayton and just be like, that's a real talent. This could be a good get for us. But the other side of this is that he's so close with Chris Paul that I have to imagine he has all of the inside details on what DeAndre Ayton is really like. So if he doesn't get good news back, maybe not. I don't know. I think we should move forward with the LeBron conversation, but I do think this is interesting. This very much screams Lakers to me.
Yeah, screams it to me as well. So let's go over your preliminary list because what I was saying before that tweet went out was that last couple months ago when the Bucks got eliminated and Giannis speculation began, you wrote a very thorough tier list about ranking every single team in terms of their viability for Giannis in terms of fit, the offer, all that stuff. You don't have that out in public, but you already have something like a very like rough list that you're probably going to post on CBS Sports, I suppose, tomorrow.
Yeah, I haven't written it. These aren't rankings, these are just tiers for now. But tomorrow morning on CBS Sports, I will have the full LeBron James tier list, all 30 teams aside from the Lakers, so all 29 teams, based on how likely I think they are to trade for LeBron if he asks for a trade. Should you want me to just go down the list and we'll talk about like teams that actually
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah.
In the lowest tier, absolutely wouldn't waive his no trade clause for them. Very quickly, Wizards, Hornets, Raptors, Jazz, Pelicans, Blazers, Kings, Grizzlies, Bulls. I sense there's no disagreement on your end from those teams.
None.
Probably wouldn't waive the no trade clause. 76ers, Pistons, Timberwolves, Magic, Hawks. I just like those teams would be pretty good. I just don't think LeBron would see it that way. And those are markets that I think for the most part he wouldn't want to live in. Not enough to make the trade even if he wanted it. The Bucks, like, would he want to play with Giannis? Sure. What are the Lakers getting out of that? Nothing. The Suns, it's kind of the same. Would Bradley Beal waive his no trade clause to get to the Lakers? Sure. Would the Lakers do that? Absolutely not. I don't see another way to do it. maybe if the playoffs had gone differently, the Pacers, like if Halliburton were healthy, maybe you think about that. But Halliburton is not healthy. It doesn't make sense. The Thunder, they won the championship. They're not doing that. No. Too much bad blood. The Celtics, absolutely not, especially in a gap year. Those two sides just hate each other. And then the Heat, like, I wouldn't rule it out, but he did not leave Miami under the best of terms. I don't think he'd be super eager to go back, especially since they're in kind of a transitional period as well. And now we're up to the teams. I have 9 teams left. This is the tier, I think, the first one that's worth talking about. He might actually consider it. So I'll list the 5 teams. Tell me which ones that are interesting to you. The Spurs, the Rockets, the Nets, the Clippers, and the Nuggets. Which of those teams stand out to you?
So I'll briefly touch on the Nuggets just because of Jokic. Probably be something like Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon.
Well, as you recall, by the way, in 2018, the Nuggets desperately tried to get a meeting with LeBron. It only took 7 years, but we're here, baby.
So, yeah, that would be also like 7 years later, the Suns getting the Wright Brooks in the Kevin Durant trade. So I think he'd definitely think about it. And then there's the Spurs. I would guess he'd have an interest in the Spurs playing with Wemby. Same thing with KD apparently making the Spurs like one of his top 2 preferences. I would have to imagine he would personally be very interested in that situation.
He has a very deep respect for Popovich. They both do, but Popovich isn't the coach anymore, so it doesn't mean quite as much. Pop is still in the building though, so like I don't know, maybe the other side of that though is that I don't know that the Spurs would want to do that, right? Because if they were going to hold back their assets for KD, why would they go for the even older LeBron unless it was just like matching salary, right? Like if LeBron said, I will go to the Spurs and only the Spurs, and you could do like Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes and whatever, yeah, sure. Then you do it and like you try to win the championship this year and you might be good enough. I just don't think that's likely. So
they would have to give up just like no picks, like very minimal, kind of like the Fox trade. So then here's the 4 teams we'll actually get a little deeper about and like talk about what an offer would look like.
Yeah. So these, I guess I would say I kind of ranked them. This was inadvertent, but I think this was the right order. At number 4, the Dallas Mavericks, Team Nike, with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, 2 of his former teammates on the team. Nico Harrison, I would presume they have a relationship from their Nike days. I don't know if any of you were on YouTube in 2010, but one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time is a song called Come On LeBron, Put Your Mavericks Jersey On. I highly recommend you all look it up. The basketball fit is obviously very, very clear because he's played with their 2 best players before. Cooper Flag is like a nice little cherry on top. And this would kind of be a great way to prove Nico Harrison's vision, right? Like defense wins championship, LeBron plays defense. They need a ball handler to get them through the Kyrie injury. LeBron is the ball handler, right? So I do think that would make sense for Dallas. The question is, what can you do to make it make sense for the Lakers?
Well, I wish I did the math earlier on this because now that Kyrie took this pay cut, he's making about $6 million less. That actually makes it a lot more feasible. So first of all, Daniel Gafford still trade eligible. So that's number 1. I guess he might be the centerpiece of like in terms of actual players coming back from the Mavs. So they're an Apron team. They just need to, I'll pull them up. They just need to do 100% match. So because they're first Apron team, and I would guess a 13 needs to get involved like the last one. So when I was trying to come up with KD trades back in the deadline, it was pretty much like this combination of guys that mostly gets you there, probably one more like Caleb Martin or Najee Marshall. So that makes the money work. And I think they still have a pretty good level of depth after, where now, so you're going Lively, AD. I mean, that's a huge lineup. I guess you're going to start LeBron with Cooper. Screw it. Just start LeBron
Cooper
at point guard.
You heard him. Jason Kidd said it, Point Cooper.
Or point LeBron, same, whatever. And then Christie at the 2. And then you still have one of Marshall or Martin. I mean,
the Lakers want Christie back. And by the way, this is an advantage for Dallas. the Lakers would probably love their 2029 pick back and their 2031 pick back. Oh, wait, the Mavericks didn't ask for that in the Luka trade. So they're already halfway there. I think they would probably like Christie and the 29 pick back. I think that would be interesting to the Lakers. Obviously, Gafford makes sense. He's reasonably affordable, and we know he worked with Luka. So that makes sense as well. I think they'd like PJ on an expiring contract for the cap space purposes. I don't know how thrilled they'd be with like Caleb Martin or Klay Thompson, like the longer term salary, but you could work a third team in there. I think that's relatively doable.
So the thing is, when we get into these, I just don't really see the Lakers getting like so much premium value for LeBron heading into age 41. So if they could get one first back, I think that's fine. We'll get into some of these other teams we're going to get into, like, just to make the money work, it's going to require these teams give up potentially really valuable players to the point that like the Lakers would really luck out if that's what ends up happening. So
right, with the Mavericks, that's not the case. So I think including a pick is like not the end of the world.
And especially if like one of these other teams we're gonna mention are seriously in the mix for LeBron, then at that point, the Mavs would probably have to include at least one first to make something that makes sense. So who do you want to touch on next?
The Golden State Warriors, who tried to trade for him at the 24 trade deadline, and he said no thanks then. Maybe the circumstances are different now. It's a very difficult trade to construct because you probably have to send Jimmy Butler to a third team. I don't think the Lakers would want Jimmy Butler. I don't know who that third team for Jimmy Butler is because he's such a, let's say, mercurial guy to add to your team. Like if you send him somewhere he doesn't want to be, I don't know that he would be thrilled about that. Like something that I kind of thought about is I wonder if the Wizards would just send you their old expiring contracts, take Butler on and say, we'll trade you at the deadline when somebody gets desperate. But finding a Butler trade is hard. I wondered about, would they maybe do Draymond and then matching salary with like Buddy and Moody and Kuminga in a sign and trade? I think that's probably too difficult. I think it would probably have to be Jimmy. So we'd have to find a third team for him. But I do think LeBron would be interested in playing for the Warriors.
So I already have the trade.
Perfect.
The thing, and I think I already told it to you. I don't know if you
have,
responded or if you didn't like
it.
Maybe you didn't like it, which is like if you didn't respond, I understand if that's a good indicator you didn't like it. The thing is, they can't really realistically roster Curry and Butler and a max guy like LeBron or Giannis. I don't really think it's possible, even if you send out Green. I have to double check. If they do, it's basically minimums the rest of the way to stay under the second apron because you got to aggregate. So the only way you avoid the aggregation is by sending out Jimmy Butler. So here's what I came up with. The Kevin Durant trade to Houston is not official yet. That can't go down until July 6th. So if LeBron wants to go to the Warriors, we're talking about a 4, potentially 5 team mega trade. So here's how it would be. What do we already know? It would be LeBron to the Warriors. Jimmy Butler goes to the Suns. So instead of the Suns bringing in Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks, they're going to get rerouted to another team. Potentially the Lakers. If the Lakers don't want those guys, then try to get a 5th team involved to bring in someone else. Kevin Durant goes to Houston like normal. That's kind of the framework. I don't think I'm missing anybody. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Jimmy Butler all getting traded in the same trade.
Wait, so Phoenix gets Jimmy and they just give up everything except for number 10.
Exactly.
So
they keep 10.
So it's
they reroute
Jalen.
They're rerouting Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks to the Lakers or a different team. Lakers get other pieces.
I think the Lakers should want those guys though, because Dillon Brooks makes a lot of sense as a defender next to Luka. And I think getting some athleticism next to Luka as a scorer, I think that's an interesting thing I would consider. I know he clashes positionally with Austin Reeves. So like maybe you're thinking about moving Green again, or maybe you're moving Reeves or whatever. But like on paper, the idea of Jalen Green with Luka does interest me. I would assume that as the Lakers, you're getting some deep future Warriors picks because that's what's interesting to me. So if you're getting 2030 and 2032, or I think it's odd. No, it'd be 28 and 2032 because they owe out to Washington in 2030. That would actually be kind of interesting to me if I were the Lakers. Those Warriors picks not only have a chance to be like really good, they have a chance to be really premium trade assets like soon. Like in 2 years, Curry and Draymond expire and LeBron presumably retires. So like as soon as the summer of 2027, you're kind of sitting on a gold mine with those Warriors picks. So that would be interesting to me. And then the basketball of it, I think, is just kind of a no-brainer, right? You'd only be good
Well,
for 2 years, but it's 2 years of LeBron, Steph, and Draymond.
well, bringing in Dylan Brooks. I mean, oh, you're talking about the Warriors. Yeah, I thought I was
Yes.
talking about the Lakers.
We'll
Yeah,
talk
no,
about the Lakers
yeah,
too. I'm curious what you
yeah.
think.
I like it. I do like it a little bit more for the Warriors. I think if you're the Lakers, yeah, bring in Dylan Brooks. You do need a wing stopper in case Dorian Finney-Smith departs. Maybe you could reroute Jalen Green to another team, get some other picks. Because yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Lakers is getting that flexibility, freeing out that 50 million or so with LeBron, bringing in some depth, but mostly getting those extra picks so you can then focus on the future, making the next great team around Luka.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. And then the last team in this tier that we're going to talk about, the New York Knicks. I don't know how interested they ever were in Kevin Durant. I suspect it was overstated, but they do have this Mikal Bridges extension coming up. They do have this Mitchell Robinson extension coming up. This could be a way for them to get out of extensions that they might not feel great about, trading those two guys to the Lakers, and then they'd have to send out a little bit more to match. Would it have to be Hart?
So there's a couple ways this can go and the best way you can kind of think about it is when what they would have had to give up for Kevin Durant, because it's basically the same thing. But you could do Towns. I believe yeah, you could do Towns straight up because LeBron makes a little bit less. So I don't know. Do you think the Lakers would consider something like that? Towns?
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
they
the
would
Knicks
want
would.
Towns. No, I mean you could
Okay.
find a third team for Towns maybe, but I don't think they would want
Hmm.
Towns. They want a defensive center.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
Robinson and Bridges and like maybe Hart, those are guys that they would be interested in, especially Hart, just because we know the Lakers love bringing in ex-Lakers more than anything. So
Yeah.
I could see that. I think the Lakers would be interested in Deuce McBride, but he's so cheap that I don't think the Lakers or the Knicks could give him away. Like if I were the Knicks, what I'd be thinking is I want to start next season with a starting five of Brunson, McBride, Anunoby, LeBron, and Cat if I'm doing that.
Well, I think the fact that the Lakers would come out of it with just one of Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby, I think that would be incredible. That's where it comes to where if the Knicks have to trade multiple of these guys to match for LeBron, because they're going to also have to do a 100% salary match. Uh, Realistically, if they're trying to keep a team as deep as possible while rostering two $50 million guys, they're going to need to do that $100 million match, 100% match, so they could stay above the first apron, try to stay below the second apron because they'd be hard caps at the second apron. So the fact that they're realistically going to have to trade one of Towns, but more realistically, one of OG or Bridges to bring in LeBron, I think that's a really great outcome for the Lakers if they could get just one of those guys. Mikal Bridges, he's extension eligible right now. Not a lot of there's like less talk about that extension than there was last year when the Knicks acquired him. When the Knicks acquired him, then shortly after Jalen Brunson signed his extension for 160. His max extension was less than the max he could get right now. It's the only reason the Knicks are under the second apron right now. And Mikal Bridges' extension is basically the same thing. And there's been zero talk about whether he's going to accept that or not. He can he can agree to it right now and make it official. And if you look deep enough on Twitter, you can see there are trade rumors regarding Mikal Bridges. They're very subtle. They're not really like linking him to any team. It's just kind of like, well, maybe they trade Mikal Bridges. So he can get more money as a 2026 free agent. As we've talked about so many times, the Lakers can be a 2026 cap space team, in which case, if Mikal Bridges wants to get more than his max extension, the Lakers can offer that. So if you can bring him in as an example, straight like even just for LeBron, like just Bridges and Mitchell Robinson, and then I guess like I
It would
would
have to be Hart for the math.
I don't think it's enough.
The
Yeah,
three of them? Bridges, Hart, and Robinson?
well, okay, yeah, that worked, but then that's too
Yeah.
much from the Knicks side.
Well, what I was going to suggest is, could the
I
Lakers send back one of their like mid-tier salaries? Would that work? Where you bring in like Gabe Vincent or Jared Vanderbilt? I haven't done the math on this, so I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe
I
that would be
mean,
a way to do that.
we could look a little later into that, but either way, value wise, if the Lakers can get a couple players from the Knicks, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, all those Knicks guys would be great fits with Luka. Like those are the kind of players that you want on a Luka team. So I think it does make sense. The Knicks don't really leak, right? Like when a Knicks transaction happens, it's usually out of the blue. Like we
Yep,
didn't know about Bridges until it happened. We didn't know about Cat until it happened. So I
yep.
do think like there is some real smoke there with Bridges. I would not like bet my life on him being on the Knicks next year, but I don't think we like know who the target is. I think they're like sniffing around stuff that we're not even really imagining. So I know that LeBron is the player they're intending, but I do think that's something that like maybe they would consider. But anyway, I mean, this is the team you all came here for. All roads lead back to Cleveland. I'm gonna just give you the floor to talk about the like sheer almost impossibility of the math. It's very, very complicated and would require Cleveland giving up an absolute ton. And I think it would take like 5 teams to make this work properly. So Yossi, you have the floor. Explain the math of why this is so hard for Cleveland.
Okay, so first, I want to talk about, should we talk about the math or get to the other point I want to talk about like why he would probably
Do
want to go to Cleveland?
do the math first. I think
Okay.
we'll get into all the other stuff because there's a
Okay.
lot. Just
Okay.
explain the math first.
Last bit of math for today, but I've tweeted this earlier today about would be required from the Cavs to acquire LeBron, but also be able to stay under the second apron, because if they're going to be trading for LeBron's 52.6, they're already above the second apron. Because they're above the apron, you got to do 100% match. They have nobody making that much, so they got to aggregate. Aggregation does a second apron hard cap. So not only do they need to send out more than LeBron's money, but they got to send out like extra money so
An extra
they can
20-ish million, right?
I think it's an extra, maybe, 17. I think they got to send out like even more money. Let's say, close to 20. So they can also get below the second apron and stay below be able to field a roster below it. You got to get up to 14 players. So assuming Mitchell and Mobley are not available, then you're looking at realistically Darius Garland, which same principle as with the Knicks. If the Lakers can get Darius Garland or even get to reroute him to a different team for another co-star for Luka, that would be amazing. That alone, I think, is great. But then also they would probably have to send out Jared Allen and DeAndre Hunter, who both make at least $20 million. So they're sending out $73 million right here, just so they can fit LeBron within the second apron. So they still have Mitchell and Mobley making their maxes as well. Strus, Lonzo. Look, I'm not saying the Cavs should do this. Actually, I don't think they should at all. And I think we'll get into a debate on that. But this is how it would probably work, where then they could have 14 players fall just under the second apron, make it all fit with 3 minimum signings. They could still use the tax mid-level, or maybe try to bring in someone making just as much. So that's the math. It's possible. I wouldn't do it if I'm the Cavs.
Okay, so my first thought, you can legally do this with Max Strus in place of Jared Allen, right? You wouldn't have the taxpayer mid-level, but like you could legally make that work. And if you had to, you could move Dean Wade to facilitate that, right? Like
I
you
think
can't
that
do
sounds
this without
right.
Allen. The guy
I
you
think,
have
yeah.
to have, the guy who has to be in the deal is Darius Garland. You can't make the math work unless Darius Garland is in this. So the question then becomes, who out of, like, you're going to have to put 2 of the 3 of Hunter, Strus, and Allen in there. Allen is the easiest because especially that's somebody the Lakers would really want, but also he makes more than Strus. So that makes the money matching easier. I suspect that the Cavs would want to keep Jared Allen if they did this, which would mean doing the format with Strus and Hunter. But that raises other complications because I think either the Lakers would want Garland, or they would happily redirect him somewhere for expiring contracts and picks. It's harder to find that team than you think because all of the teams that would have made sense like a month ago are kind of off the board. Like Orlando's not going to do it. They got Desmond Bane. New Orleans isn't going to do it. They just drafted Jeremiah Fears. San Antonio's not going to do it. They just traded for De'Aaron Fox and they drafted Dylan Harper. Finding that team is a little bit harder. But I think the value of Garland is enough that like that's good enough from the Lakers side. They're just not going to want Strus and or Hunter. So we're going to have to redirect them. And that means at some point and somewhere along this path, we have to loop in Brooklyn, right? Because that's the only team that can take in a salary of that size without sending more money back out and further complicating this. So Brooklyn has to be paid to do this. And that's not going to be cheap, presumably, even though these are reasonable contracts. So this is difficult. The question then becomes, for Cleveland, does it make sense to do this? And I think we come down probably on different sides. I am not on an absolute here, right? Like, I very much understand the logic of don't do this if you're Cleveland, because Darius Garland is 25 and LeBron is 40. That's enough. You can stop right there. Darius Garland was really good last year. If Darius Garland was healthy against Indiana, they might have won that series or at the very least come a lot closer. So all of that is legitimate. Here's what I'm going to say. The way their roster is constructed, we've talked about this, a lot of other people have talked about it. They're doing their 2-year second apron run now, right? This version of the team is going to be together for 2 years before there is some substantial change. We don't know what that is. That might be Garland. It might be something else. But you're keeping this version of the team together for 2 years. At that point, like, you don't look at Darius Garland as somebody that's going to be there for his whole career because they have Mitchell and Mobley ahead of him in the pecking order. And if long-term you're only going to have 2 max salaries, those are going to be the guys. So I sort of suspect that Darius Garland may not be super long for Cleveland anyway. So then you kind of ask what maximizes our chances to win the 2026 championship. So I look at the guys they'd be sending out. Darius Garland does not have a sterling playoff record, right? Like, he was hurt this year. Fine. Like, I'm not going to take that away. Had not been good in the playoffs in the previous years against Orlando and Boston and the Knicks. He's a small guard. He's very, very vulnerable on defense. Jared Allen, and I don't think this is talked about enough, has been a playoff disaster in Cleveland. He has been outright bad. He said after the Knicks series, I didn't realize the lights were going to be this bright. You can't say that, man. I'm sorry, you just can't. He had the injury. He sat out last year. He got bullied by Miles Turner this year. He has a very, very spotty playoff track record. You know who doesn't have a spotty playoff track record is LeBron James. If you have LeBron, Mitchell, and Mobley, that's about as perfect a trio of scorers and of like stars as you can possibly have going into the postseason, right? Like, you have all the playmaking you need with LeBron. You have all the creation you need between the three of them. All three of them defend like at an acceptable playoff level. Mobley obviously much higher than that. I don't think people were really watching what LeBron was doing against Minnesota defensively. He was awesome on defense in that series. Mitchell, not a great defender, good enough, fine. But you also have Lonzo Ball. You still have Dean Wade, presumably. You're going to keep one of Allen, Strus, and Hunter. Like, that's not going to be a really thin team. Craig Porter is like a fine regular season player. You're going to do well with your minimums. I think Jalen Tyson might be something. That team is not going to be as thin as you think because they were so deep already that making a trade like this kind of just takes you back to normal. So ultimately, if you're asking me which version of the Cavaliers do I think has a better chance of winning a championship in the next 2 years, the version with Garland and more depth or the version with LeBron, I would probably pick LeBron. Now, you have more championship equity over the next 10 years if you keep Garland, because even if you don't keep him long term, you can flip him for $1 million picks. You can flip him for cheaper role players. You're going to get value that extends beyond the next year or two. So I do understand that. But given that they're all in on the next 2 years, I am very open to the LeBron version of that team.
I hear you. I still wouldn't do it if I were them. I think they have you can make the case that they probably do increase their title odds this year, but I think they might have enough. Not necessarily to beat OKC. But
that's what they're trying to do.
Yes. But I don't even know. But I'm not even convinced that LeBron gets them over that hump. So in that case, I don't think I want to sacrifice like another like 4 to 5 years of a playoff equity for just maximizing 1 to 2 a little bit. And I think it's too much. I think the Cavs, like, deep down, they're probably very, they're attached with Garland. I don't think they'd want to trade him right now. That's the thing. Like, we're going through this, and it just seems more so as if this is something what LeBron would want. And this goes to my other point where I've written about this when Kevin Durant got traded, where he's now on his 5th team, which is kind of high for all-time greats, so to speak. I'm not trying to get like first takey here, but like, I wonder if like the idea of him going back to Cleveland does have something to do with how people will like look back on his career, where like a lot of the all-time greats are like they stay with the same team their whole career, or like they play for 2 maximum. If he goes back to Cleveland, then he could technically say he only played for 3 teams, even though it was 5 different stops in the end. A little strategy there for like how people might look back, in the future. But I do think we should probably wrap up the LeBron talk, because us getting this DeAndre Ayton curveball might just completely make this whole discussion irrelevant.
Yeah. I'm thinking about this because I have to write this tomorrow, and I'm kind of nervous now.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about Ayton a little more, because everyone on my timeline is connecting them to the Lakers. They both are Luka and Ayton are BDA, so there is that. The agency wise, they share the same agent. But what other
for the fans out there?
Yeah, what are the other Ayton teams? I mean, might as well go through this exercise. We just went through LeBron teams. Let's go through Ayton teams quickly.
Who else needs a mid-level center? Like the Clippers, maybe. I'm trying to think of who else. The Bucks.
Well, he's gonna be requiring us like I'm guessing this is like contingent on him getting a starting opportunity as well. So opportunity definitely matters. So let's see. I guess the Warriors. But if you're the Warriors, is that what you want to do? Like, give him the full mid-level, hard cap yourself, and then that's kind of the big move?
Well, if you think about it, isn't DeAndre Ayton kind of like the ultimate James Wiseman, right? Like, haven't they been spending years trying to do this very thing where they add the really athletic, really talented center, give themselves some vertical gravity, like running pick and roll that way? I don't know. I could see the Warriors doing this. Again, it very much screams Lakers, but I could see the Warriors doing that, sure.
Pistons, they have cap space? No.
Well, they're using it on Alexander Walker.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, it did not like it. The
Knicks for the tax mid-level is a no, right? Like, that's a
you know what? I have a decent one. Memphis.
What?
That means then they can renegotiate. That means if they're using the full mid-level, they're not renegotiating Jaren. So that's probably...
Which, by the way, we're going to have to monitor because they're linked to Ty Jerome as well. So I have a lot of questions about what's going on in Memphis, but that plays out.
Milwaukee, actually. That's technically... They could give him the full mid-level and the opportunity.
That's like that's a sensible thing to do if you're the Bucks. Like, that's sort of like the Suns trading for Mark Williams. It's a different kind of risk. But it's like, we are so bereft of talent that we have to take like a really big swing of some sort. That makes some sense to me. I could see that for the Bucks.
Oh my God. What if the Pacers use the mid-level to sign Ayton and then sign and trade Miles Turner to like Detroit?
Oh my God. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh man.
The Pacers are responsible for this.
Wait, can I make one more point about Cleveland and LeBron? By the way, I forgot to say this. Technically, like, it's a funny way to frame this, but if LeBron traded for Cleveland, or if Cleveland traded for LeBron, it would actually be kind of a brilliant, stealthy way for them to save a whole lot of money, because they'd have to get below the second apron, which means they would like shave $100 million off of their tax bill. And then LeBron is expiring after the season. So something else I wonder about, like, he's not extension eligible, right? The 1+1 is too short.
I'm sorry. I just got carried away by a really good Ayton team, actually.
Oh, well, you get my basic idea. That's like, if Cleveland were to trade for LeBron, they could save so much tax money. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, it's like 130 million. They'd save like 130 million against the tax by getting to the second apron. Orlando.
That's pretty interesting. I could kind of get behind that. How are they clearing the full mid level?
So right now after declining Mo and who else did they decline? Caleb Houston. They declined all their options. They are about 7 million below the 7.7 million below.
First
With
apron or
12
below the
players.
tax?
The tax. So they're going to
Okay.
want to stay below the tax. So if you dump Jet Howard, well, hold on a second, because they also got to get 3 more players. So, oh no, so this is like an Isaac trade then. If you can at a minimum dump Isaac, but then you have 4 centers, assuming Mo Wagner's coming back. Maybe that's a Wendell move. You move on from Wendell, or a combination of Goga and Isaac. I mean, because that would make sense if you maybe they still want to do 3 centers. Because if you have Wendell and Ayton making the mid level, you could still bring back Wagner at like maybe the tax mid level, and then that might make some sense. But either way, I would probably think Isaac at a minimum would have to go out to fit the full mid level.
Am I crazy for thinking I'd rather just have Jonathan Isaac be really good for 15 to 20 minutes a game than to roll the dice on Ayton? Like, I know what I have in Isaac. It's low minutes, but he's so freaking good in those minutes defensively. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. The more we talk about it, the less interested I am. Can I put out a team that would 100% do it, but it would really disappoint me? What are the Bulls
Uh,
doing?
oh, the Bulls, yeah,
Because they don't have a long-term center. And like their whole thing is they love, like the Lakers, former high draft picks that they can vastly overpay for, right? With Caruso for Giddey and Okoro for Ball. Like this seems like something that they would do. So as we've talked out this exercise, I think the Lakers are the favorite, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was something he did with like something prearranged with the Lakers. But there are other teams here. I don't think it's quite
yeah.
the same dunk.
Just a couple others, but it'd probably be a little more complicated. So now I'm just talking fit. Toronto, if they can move some money around, maybe they move off Pirtle. Maybe. This is just because I think they would want him regardless. It wouldn't be a good role, but if Philly can get Deandre Ayton somehow, I think they would absolutely love to have him back
That's
up
actually
Embiid.
perfect. Because you need
Yeah,
a spot starter. You don't just need a backup. You need somebody who can actually be a reasonable starter. So I'm kind of wondering. I think Grimes is probably a bigger priority for them.
yeah.
Portland isn't going to be able to take in Grimes financially. That doesn't really make sense, right? You couldn't double
Wait,
sign.
which team? Which team?
Portland couldn't take in Grimes, but also Philly can't
Oh, they
deal with.
could. Yeah, yeah. Now they could. Now that they're getting Aiden to take a buyout.
Oh,
If
that's
he's
right. Yeah,
giving
we
up,
hadn't thought about how much they were saving.
if he's giving back like the full mid level, here I'll just like.
But
I
wait,
just
quick
want to
thing
like.
with Philly though, they can't deal with a first apron hard cap, so they're not going to be able to sign and trade. They might have to like renounce Grimes if they're going to use the full mid level.
No. Sixers would basically be a minimum. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to offer much. I'm just saying the Sixers would
Yeah.
probably love to try to get Aiden. So Aiden 35.5 post buyout. If it is the full mid level, we'll drop them down to here, in which case they have like 22 million below the tax. So now that does open up sign and trade possibilities for the Blazers, open up the full mid level, because right before they had 8 million. Yeah, that's another element. No one's really talking about what this probably means for the Blazers. They have a lot more money to spend and a lot more trade flexibility. Maybe they want to try, like, what if they trade? Like now you can package some of their other expiring guys. I'm like looking at Jeremy Graham, like no. I'm thinking of like Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle. They're expiring. You can then bring back like a $30 million guy if they want to do something aggressive like that. Alternatively, just use the full mid level, bring in somebody trying to trade for someone. They could use some more shooting. Maybe they make a sense of, maybe they do make sense as like a Quinn and Grimes team if they want to give up a pick to the Sixers.
I mean, yeah, if the Sixers could get a pick out of that arrangement and also get themselves out of the shooting guard logjam that they have, I'd be kind of interested in that. The role is going to be fascinating because there would be games, presumably, where Ayton would play like 10 minutes. Because if Embiid has it, you're just like, you're not playing them together.
Yeah.
But then there are also going to be months where Embiid is out and he's just a full-time starter. Has anybody ever like long-term had a role like that where it's like sometimes you play 35 minutes and sometimes you play 10, and that's just going to go on for several years.
I've got a couple other teams really quickly. I think we have to mention this one. The Spurs. They need a backup
Oh,
big.
because
They got
that's
the
like
full
the
mid
ultimate
level.
question of culture versus player. It's them or Miami, where they could get their hands on him and like culture all over him. That gets kind of interesting.
I I would not rule out the Spurs. Not the greatest role, but at the same time, maybe the Spurs do this with the idea that they would start Wemby at the 4. I don't know, but
I wouldn't start Wemby at the 4.
yeah,
I would rather, like, you're taking away a lot of the advantage of just having him if you're having him
yeah,
at 4 instead of 5.
yeah.
But like
Excellent
they could
backup big
play
though.
some minutes together.
Yeah, and then a dark horse. In case this is a team that's kind of just been like a lot of people don't know what they're gonna do. But if the Kings did something, they started
Well,
to
they
trade
did
some of their
just save a
highest
bunch of
paid
money with the
players.
John Ellis option.
Yeah, if they were to trade Sabonis, if some other team made a big offer for them, I think that could make some sense. Oh, and then you know what? The Pelicans. I think the Pelicans would probably want to go after Aiden. I mean, he'd
Well,
be their best
they
center,
just picked
right?
Queen. Are they playing Queen at 4? Are they trading Zion? What are they doing?
Maybe they trade Misi because maybe that front office isn't it's not their guy. Maybe they'd want to move on from him and bring in
I do
Aiden. I don't
think
know.
Connect for Misi makes a lot of sense, just given the needs that both those teams have, and they were drafted in the same part of the draft. I do think that could make some sense, but Misi is a long-term play. That's not a
Yeah.
short-term play. We're going through the exercise, and
Yeah.
there are other teams. It does
Still the
sort of
Lakers.
like it feels like it's the Lakers. So
Yeah.
here's the next question. Number one, how much does that cost? Can you get Ayton and then re-sign Finney-Smith? And then after that, if you could pull that off, you've kept your best wing defender, you've added your starting center, but you still have all of your tradable salary. And knowing the way that the Lakers operate, I don't think they would use it to make a splash during the offseason. I think they would do what they've done with LeBron and AD a few times, which is go out and prove that you deserve us to make a trade. But if they're really good in the first half of the season, then you could talk about, like, what could we get for our 2031 first round pick and the expiring contracts of Kleba and Vincent, or Kleba, Vincent, and Vanderbilt, or maybe Rui. Like, that seems like something they would do, but that requires LeBron's buy-in. And we don't know if LeBron is okay with DeAndre Ayton. Like, maybe we'll find out, but I think getting Ayton in free agency is much more appealing than anything we thought was on the table for them before.
So let's say they get him on the mid level. I've got Dorian out. So now they're hard capped to the first apron. They can't just bring back Dorian Finney-Smith. They would need to shed money. So then maybe if you're the Lakers, you consider the possibility of trading that 2031, 2032 first round pick, whichever one, packaging some of these guys in an effort to save some money, maybe bring in a guy on a rookie deal, and then you open up the money
And
where you could something like that, sure. And then hopefully you don't have to give up a pick if you're doing that. But the idea is then you're saving enough money where you could then fit Dorian Finney-Smith. And like we discussed yesterday, I think the Lakers have to keep their wings. I think that's very important. And getting a guy like Aiden to complete this lineup, and then they'll still need another big. They could probably use the biannual, but I don't think they're not gonna get anyone really well with that. So hopefully, if you do that trade I'm talking about, you can turn like a combination of these guys for a quality backup center in the process. Then that might end up working out for the Lakers.
Biannual is like what, 5 million?
Yeah, it's like just under the tax mid level, but at that point, it's like you can very much talk a certain player to taking the minimum at that point.
Well, what I'm saying is the tax mid level is so, like, the difference between the tax mid level and the biannual is so small that any player you could conceivably get for the tax mid level, you could probably also get for the biannual. So my thought is, like, what if you sign Ayton as the starter for the mid level and Brook Lopez is the backup for the biannual? Because if they were linked to him for the tax mid level anyway, the money is the same. You're beating the minimum market. Now that would just be a question of where does Brook Lopez want to be, and if he decides he'd rather play for another team, or if he prioritizes, money above all else, then maybe somebody blows them out of the water. But he's from Southern California. Obviously, he's been a Laker before. We know Rob Pelinka loves to bring back former Lakers, whether they were good while they were there or not. So, like, that's something that I could kind of see. But my priority, first and foremost, would be if you're getting Ayton, find a way to bring Finney-Smith back too, because now, like, you're kind of opening the door to something more interesting this season. But again, we don't know if that's the priority. And LeBron might look at Ayton and be like, cool, that's good for Luka. I wish them the best. That doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, and if you could get Brook Lopez to be the backup on the biennial, then the Lakers just have the best of both worlds. They've got their, I mean, where do you rate Aiden as far as like a rim protector?
Not good for the most
Not
part.
good at all. Okay.
Well,
so
like,
I mean, at least they have their lob. At least they have their lob threat, and then they have their stretch big off the bench.
I'll say that I don't know where to rate him because he hasn't taken basketball seriously in 3 years, right? Like the version of him that took the Suns to the finals in 2021, that guy was like a solid rim protector, right? Not Rudy Gobert, but like he was really impactful. He was probably the best one-on-one Jokic defender I've seen in a playoff series. That's something that would like be pretty interesting. If you could get him to buy in and take it seriously, like I think you could have a pretty interesting rim protector. If you're getting the guy who's been in Portland the last couple of years, you're not getting anything on defense, right? And like that's the other question. Is he just going to take a million mid-range jumpers like he always does? Is he going to refuse to get fouled? Is he going to like get in the mix and do the dirty work a center needs to do? Because lately he hasn't been doing that. We've only really seen him do that for a year or two when the Suns were really good. You don't know what version you're getting. I'm open to taking the swing because I think they do need the upside, but I'm not looking at this as a guarantee, right? I'm not looking at this like you sign him and you're automatically getting the guy who Indiana gave the max to. It is a high risk, high reward signing.
Yeah. So this became Deandre Ayton hour. This was like
what weird timing.
Yeah, that was perfect. So I think it's a good way to transition to a little more on Dorian Finney-Smith and the Houston situation, where so he opted out today, and I'm not sure what it means that he opted out because I kind of felt that he would opt in. He before the season, but like around the time they acquired him, I was thinking maybe they'd give him like a raise off his salary, like maybe make closer to like 15, 16 million a year. And it seems like he's still pushing for that, but now it seems like there very much is interest out there. I don't know who would be. Houston, they're reportedly interested in him, and they're like a viable suitor according to Jake Fisher. So it's just like whatever I was gonna say, it's like completely different now with the Aiden stuff. But yeah, I think now at this point it's all about the Lakers just trying to find a way to fit both guys, assuming they are the Aiden team. But if with Houston, they can give him the mid-level. I would think they try to open it up to try to do a sign and trade, just because that way they could beat the market on Dorian Finney-Smith. They have a better chance of securing him. And then you get the Lakers to agree to something, I don't know. What do you think about Dorian Finney-Smith in Houston? And because the other thing about that is that would take him into the tax. I would put him right against the first apron. Do you think it's worth it for the Rockets to add who would be like their 8th, 9th guy at the full mid-level and to enter the tax already?
Yeah, it kind of seems like they have this, right? They have the better version at home. They have Jabari Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith feels pretty redundant there. I guess they would look at him as a Dylan Brooks replacement. And I guess he's more of like a man-to-man defender than Jabari is, whereas Jabari's better as help. He can play center. Dorian Finney-Smith is more like 3s and 4s defensively. So like maybe that's it. Maybe they're looking at him as a Dylan Brooks replacement. I think it's more like they just see a championship window and they don't want to waste a resource. I personally would be a little skeptical of going into the tax for him. I might have gone a different way. I guess they would maybe save some money if they signed and traded, because like Cam Whitmore is somebody that would probably interest the Lakers a fair bit. I think the Lakers would love the idea of getting a young guy on a rookie deal, and just like they're doing sort of a similar thing with Ayton, where it's like, we're just rolling the dice on talent. Let's see if we can get somebody that requires little investment and see if they just hit it out of the park and we hit a home run here. It'd also be kind of funny that it would kind of right the wrong of the injustice of the Jalen Hood Shafino draft pick, where we saw that screenshot a million times, where right after him was Jaime Jaquez and Brandon Pajemski and Cam Whitmore, and maybe there was one other guy, I can't remember. I do think Laker fans would be really into that. From the Houston side, it tilts them a little bit more towards defense than offense. Finney-Smith is like a decent shooter, not great, nothing on the ball, obviously. He was really good for the Lakers, but he's also 32. I mean, I get it if they're just like, we have a chance to win the championship, we're leaving no stone unturned. I don't know. I wouldn't be super excited for him. I don't think he would have a huge role there, but it couldn't hurt.
No, I'm with you there. So the other thing with the Rockets right now, they're in a position to duck the tax, and we've talked about like what it would take for the Rockets to want to enter the tax this year. And I think at this point it'd be getting an all-star or like a Derek White type guy. For several reasons now, those trades now seem even more unlikely, especially because of a specific extension that the Rockets got done today. And so if you're the Rockets, like I think you're bringing him in, like, because if you're bringing him Dorian Finney-Smith in, you're going to start getting into the tax already, and I just don't think it's quite worth that for how's he gonna how much can he play with all the wings that they have? They have the front court is so loaded with Şengün, KD, Adams, Jabari, Tari Eason. So I think it's mostly like a value play at this point where you're bringing him in, you bring him in on a contract that you think could be movable later, and then maybe around the trade deadline, that could be the salary that they use primarily to go after one of these other players we talked about. Maybe someone. Cause I think they need some more shooting right now. They could use another guard. Yeah, I'm not too crazy about the possibility of them bringing him in.
My other question would be, I feel like you're giving Ime Udoka a lot of reasons not to play Reed Shepherd, and I don't like that considering how much shooting they need. Right? Like I could see Reed Shepherd like missing a rotation in the second game of the year, and then it's like, well, that's enough of that. And Finney-Smith just suddenly is playing 25 minutes a game. I'd be a little iffy there. So I almost like sometimes every now and then, even with great coaches, the GM kind of has to get rid of a player just to save them from themselves. Danny Ainge did this with Brad Stevens a few years ago with Daniel Tice, where it was like, we got to get rid of him because Brad won't stop playing him. There's a situation like that every now and then.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of what I'm worried about. I really want them to play Reed Shepherd real minutes next year. I think his shooting would be so powerful on that roster. And I don't want them to fall into the trap of like, everybody has to be a great defender on this team, because that's what Ime Udoka's inclination is going to be. So again, like, he's a good player and good value. And like, I am all for you using every resource at your disposal. I just don't know that he specifically is the guy that I would go after if I were them. And if I were him, like, the money's good and you have no state income tax. The role there is not going to be what it could be elsewhere.
Now, I'll throw you something that could make more sense, where there are some redundancies if they bring him in. The most overlap there is would be Tari Eason. We just saw Jabari extend. If they don't plan on extending Tari, if they're not close on an extension, what if they could trade him to bring in some more shooting? Maybe they could get in some extra draft picks, in which case, okay, Dorian Finney-Smith now starts to make a lot more sense there. What do you think?
I just think Tari Eason is too good. I wouldn't want to get rid of him. Like, he's legitimate, really, really good defensive player. I don't know. That to me, like, you have to get something pretty interesting. And
exactly.
Again, I don't think they need more shooting. I think they need to use the shooting they have. They have shooting at home. It's named Reed Shepherd. So that's my first priority for them. Like, I've seen people mention maybe Ty Jerome for them. And I'm like, look, Ty Jerome is good. Ty Jerome would help them. Just use Reed Shepherd.
Yeah, I just bring it up because as far as the basketball fit this year, I feel like that's how it makes the most sense.
The Lakers would love Tari Eason. Maybe sign and trade him there. Like, the Lakers would love him.
Yeah. No, that would be great for the Lakers. So, I mean, we've already gone over a little over an hour. So I figure for the rest of these, we're mainly going to talk about just some of the contracts that were signed today. Just kind of quick discussion on some of these. Jabari Smith resigning, extending with the Rockets for 5 years, 122 million, fully guaranteed, no options. What do you think about that?
That feels like a pretty good deal to me, right? Like that's less money than Nas Reed, and it also starts a year after Nas Reed, so
Oh
theoretically
wow,
higher cap.
I did not
It's
even connect the dots on that.
I think you might have tweeted this or somebody else did. The average is 12.7% of the cap on this deal, right?
Yeah, that was
That's
me.
pretty good. Like it's rare that you get a number 3 overall pick that I'm not going to say lived up to expectations, but hasn't been a bust, like has been a good player. There's usually so much upside attached to a prospect drafted that high that they kind of like automatically get way more than they deserve. And that just isn't the case here. They're paying Jabari like the player he's been instead of the player that he might one day be. Now he does not do anything on the ball. He can't really dribble. He's not going to create his own shot. I know they drafted him hoping that could come, and like maybe it will. Maybe being next to Durant helps on that front. But even if he's just like a really good defender that shoots threes, given his positional versatility, having that guy at a number that like by the end is barely going to be above the mid level, that's fine. And by the way, I also want to know what the structure here is going to be. Like if they can make this flat or descending, I don't know where the math checks out for next year, but they have to extend Tari Easton and Durant. If those guys would leave a little bit less on the table, maybe you could structure the Jabari deal so that it goes down. That could be really powerful for them too. So I think this is a really good deal for Jabari. I would rather have Jabari's next 5 years than Nas Reed's next 5 years. Not really connected because the contracts aren't perfectly aligned, but broadly because they're similar numbers.
Well, here's the connection is that the reason I brought up 12.7% is because that is the average of Jaden McDaniels' contract, which is a great contract for the Wolves. And I didn't even like realize that they're basically paying Nas Reed to around the same to come off the bench mostly, hopefully become a starter. So with Jabari, you're hoping he's gonna be like this is really good third option at worst fourth option money. Like I think there's definitely a lot baked into his potential. Like they extended Jalen Green on that contract. They kept it a little shorter, despite him still having a lot of stuff to overcome. I still think Jabari's got some work to do, and they clearly believe in him. The thing that I'm always pressing about with the decision to keep Jabari is that I think there's value with playing him next to KD. Maybe that could help him a lot. But I would say if by next year he's gonna start next year, if he's not like at least the fourth option, like definitively, like if Fred still has to take more shots than him, I feel then that could be a problem. But if he can at least be a good fourth option, then this should at least starting next year and then get, improve upon that. I feel like this contract should work out.
Well, yeah, I also think there's a lot of tradability baked in here because I don't think the Rockets are really equipped to maximize him, just given the way that they play in the roster that they have. Because I think the way you milk the most possible value out of this contract is that you play Jabari some as a small ball center. And I don't think the Rockets want to do that, just given how much they're paying Şengün, and they just paid Steven Adams at the top of the market for a backup center. At least in the short term, that's not what they're thinking. It's a great weapon to have when you can go double big or you can play small. How many teams have that kind of versatility? It's basically only the Thunder. So I would like it if Houston like really mixed and matched and took advantage of that versatility. But I suspect he's mostly a four on this team. I'm not super concerned with the offense. I don't care if he ever dribbles again in his life. If he makes threes and defends at the level that I think he can, I think this is a fine deal.
Julius Randle re-signing for three. This is probably an extension, 3 years for 100.
When I saw the Nas Reed contract, I thought that's starter money. Well, this is starter money too, and Rudy Gobert is there. I really don't understand paying 3 front court players $100 million, especially when like I don't know that all of them really make sense together, right? You're never going to play all 3. I don't think you can get away defensively with Randle and Nas together. Is one of them on the way out? Like, do they think this contract makes Randle more tradable? I'm just trying to figure out what exactly the plan here is because my thought, frankly, is like I think I would have rather re-signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker than gone this long on Julius Randle. Now, that said, they do have Terrence Shannon and Rob Dillingham coming up, so maybe they thought losing Alexander Walker wasn't the end of the world. But I don't think all three of those front court guys are going to make it through their current contracts on the team, right? Gobert and Randle now have 3 years committed, and Naz Reid has 5. I would suspect like within the next 2 years, one of those guys is off the team. I just don't know who it is.
Yeah. This kind of is a result of the cat trade. We talked about Naz Reid getting this contract very much like, I feel like a lot of that was kind of set in stone once the Wolves traded Cat, because that was a big bet on Naz Reid. They really depend on him now. Julius Randle ended up working out pretty well for the Wolves. We'll see if he can keep this up. But as far as why they went in ahead and did this, there's some short term, I think, going on where now, so they've got Naz Reid back. This is probably where it's going to start at with the 8% raises. Now with Randle, it's an extension and he remains trade eligible. I got confirmation from John Krasinski of The Athletic. He replied to something I was saying about Julius Randle, which means that Julius would probably start here. So one, you're getting him at like around the same amount of money. But the other thing is that most likely they eliminated his incentives. He had like a $1.5 million in incentives. So that gives him a lot more second apron space. So this isn't to help keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker, just to help fill out the roster, because it seems like they set a line to not exceed the 207.8. So this deal came out pretty much exactly like how I kind of expected Randle to get, around what he's currently making and just slowly building off that. So I think it's okay. If he continues playing at this level, then it should be a fine contract. That's just the big thing where now he just finished year 11. So now he's under contract through what will be year 14. That's the big bet. Like, does he hold this level of production up? I would guess there's like a pretty good chance maybe by that last year it starts to become a negative value. But as far as this year's concerned, I feel like he's properly paid.
Can they use the tax mid-level? Have they saved enough?
Yes and no. Bobby Marks actually commented on this where they can use the tax mid-level where things stand. Actually, no, I don't think they could. They'd probably slightly exceed the second apron just by doing the math in my head. So they'd have to do a little something, but like who are you trading? I don't think there's really anything that makes sense like to trade anyone in their top 9. Like, and then you can look at Leonard Miller, but you're not going to get any savings. You're actually going to lose money because to replace him with a minimum is actually going to be even more money. So that might be even the value in keeping Miller right now. He's actually saving them like a little bit more flexibility. So unless you're trading Conley, he's the most expendable of the group. But like, then what ball handling are you going to get? Like, you need to get a point guard back.
Get off of Conley and then sign Tyus Jones or Trey Jones. I don't think they'd want to bring back because that way you get younger. I initially had hoped, like, could you get off of Conley save enough to save to bring back Nickeil Alexander-Walker? I think his market has gotten too high for that, but I would probably rather get a little bit worse than also get younger. The question is, would you find somebody who would take Conley? And I think you'd have to incentivize someone somewhat. I don't think that's all that likely, but I'd rather have Tyus Jones than Mike Conley, and he's also cheaper if you're using the tax mid-level.
So Tyus Jones, when things weren't looking too good for him last free agency, and I was thinking about like, okay, who are the teams that are gonna like potentially get him on the minimum? The Wolves came out number 1 for me. I thought that made a lot of sense. He would have had a good chance to start. Then he went to the Suns. There, right? I don't know. Oh, he started his career with the Wolves, right?
Oh, well, that might be his hometown team, or I might be making that up. Keep talking.
So I still like the idea of them bringing in Tyus Jones. So if that's where they want to go, where they're willing to trade Conley, and like, it wouldn't be indefensible if they decided to trade Conley. He's now going to be entering year 19. Like, I haven't paid too much attention to how well he's held up, but if you feel like this could be the year where he really starts to like slip into being not like productive, maybe you want to get ahead of that. Maybe you could bring in someone a little cheaper. I don't know like what kind of player, but just save a little bit of money. Not you don't need to do a straight dump. Just get somebody in at any position. They do need another. I think they're still looking for another big. Can you turn Conley into like a $5-6 million big? Trade some seconds in the process, and then you have the money to get Tyus Jones. I like that.
Yeah, he is from there. He's from Burnsville, Minnesota, attended Apple Valley High School in Minnesota. So yeah, I do think that makes sense. My question for them, and this is a question we throw around a lot, especially in the Thunder era, is just like, where's their upside, right? Because they were a bug on Oklahoma City's windshield last year in the playoffs. They had no chance in that series, despite the like one blowout and the one close game. The Thunder were way better than them. And all I want to know for Minnesota is how do you plan to bridge that gap? I think Tim Connolly is creative enough that like they went for Durant. They're going to go for guys that we don't expect them to go for. But like that's my big question because right now, like I know they've made the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row. I don't think either of us remotely think of them as like likely to be the second best team in the West. I think we probably both think of them more as like the fifth best team or the sixth best team or something like that. So if that's
Yeah,
the case, I just want to know what their move upward is. And as I look at it, it feels very heavily reliant on Rob Dillingham or
yeah,
Terrence Shannon being
exactly.
a lot better than we think they're going to be. And we'll see. We'll see if that plays out. They'll get the chance this year with Alexander Walker gone. But yeah, my question for them is all on the upside. And I am, as somebody who's lower on Julius Randle, I feel like they're throwing a lot of resources into a worse version of last year's team.
I was gonna say you just the upside is hoping Rob Dillingham explodes. He just becomes whatever they're hoping he'd be immediately. That might bridge the gap. Bobby Portis, 3 years, 44 million. Just like with Randall, this could be an extension, and if so, could keep him trade eligible. Uh, I what do you think about this deal? And are you? I would hope that this is a deal that keeps him trade eligible.
Yeah, I mean, this strikes me very much as an appease Giannis sort of thing. I have always been way lower on Bobby Portis than I think most. I just think backup bigs that don't really defend are just very much luxury players. And that's fine when you have Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton and Brooke Lopez, and like you're in a position where you can afford to have luxury players. The Bucks are missing so many necessities that I just kind of look at him as like, I don't know. I'd rather use that money on like a wing defender or like more shooting or a point guard to replace Dame while he's out. I don't know. This very much just seems like Giannis would prefer this. So I guess that's going to keep him happy for another couple months. I personally am just not a big fan of Bobby Portis.
So I think it just kind of depends on how you feel about him on his current contract. If you weren't a fan of him on what he was currently making, then this contract basically keeps him in line there. So uh, it's slightly below the mid level. So the hope is then if things do change, if Giannis does request a trade and you need to blow things up, that you can then you can trade Bobby and get some assets back. He would have, it fits below the mid level exception. So if a team has that amount, then they can take him in with that. I just feel like he's kind of like neutral. But same thing with Randall. Portis is now in year, I think he was 2015. So now year 10, just finished year 10. Um, so this deal now take him through year 13. Yeah, just kind of like with Randall, I guess like solid chance that towards the end of it might become a negative value. We'll see. Um, Harden, 2 years, interesting deal, 81-ish million with a mutual option on year two. So he's got a player option and it's partially guaranteed. We don't know what that amount is yet. Buddy Hield basically did this with the Warriors last year, where the last year on his deal is a player option, but if he picks it up, then the Warriors can waive him, but it's only 3 million guaranteed. So they'd get a small little dead cap hit. I'm kind of like neutral on this. I think it's like fine. I don't really have any strong opinions on it. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of just aligning Harden and Kawhi. They both expire in 27. I would assume they keep Harden on that 26, 27 option unless something goes drastically wrong. it kind of seems like they're just treading water until they figure out what the like next big swing is. They'll probably use the full mid-level. They'll get better on the margins. Like this seems just kind of like standard business. They got him at roughly the price they had him last year with a slight raise. So whatever, it's fine. I
Yep.
don't think this changes anything for the Clippers.
I would say this is kind of a win for the Clippers compared to what the projections being thrown out earlier, where the expectation was that James Harden will opt out and re-sign for a slight raise and probably a 2-year deal that aligns with Kawhi. And instead of getting the second year fully guaranteed, there's a partial there. And maybe Harden, maybe things change. Maybe he'll want to leave as a free agent which would help the Clippers with their cap space aspiration. So that's the thing, though. We still need to find out what is that partial guarantee. I will say, usually with these reportings that the longer we go without finding out what the number is for some of these things, usually more favorable for the team. Because I was thinking, like, initially when I heard a partial guarantee that he's probably getting like most of it guaranteed, like maybe 50 to 60% guaranteed. What if it's more like Buddy Hield, where it's like, what is 3 million of 10 million, like a third guaranteed, 20% guaranteed? I don't know. I guess we'll find out soon what that amount is. I would have to guess. I'm starting to think it is something more towards there on the lower side, where the Clippers are trying to have cap space in 2026. I would guess they want that to be pretty low. So I'm very curious to find out what the number is. Josh Hart also did this deal, but it was non-guaranteed. He didn't get waived, but he also, just worth noting. Last thing I want to talk about, OKC. Just like what they're doing right now. They went ahead.
Good at this. Yeah. Who would have thought?
Like you might be listening and thinking like, OKC, what have they done? Like, I'll tell you what they've done. First of all, I was kind of confused. I had my information wrong. I didn't know Jalen Williams had a team option. I think I said that.
So I was right. You told me it was a non-guarantee. Yeah. I was so nervous last night. I thought I'd written incorrect things.
That's my fault. That's my biggest fault of my coverage in this entire offseason. Where I could, if I knew that, I would have written about what that contract could look like. I was surprised, like, wait, Jalen Williams extended. So yeah, I just for some reason didn't have that he had a team option, so he could extend. And he did. So essentially what they're doing with him and AJ Mitchell, they're getting them on deals that for Jalen Williams, they're going to decline it. Declining, I even like called it exactly to the number that based on the terms, 3 for 24 with a team option, they could start it at this amount. Then it's going to go down to 7.8. So the Thunder just front loading all their contracts like usual, so they can have a higher level of depth, and they're going to be approximately $1.5 million below the tax with their roster set. Maybe they do something a little later involving Jang if they need to, and this just sets them up nicely for next season. We're still waiting to hear on the extensions for their top 3 guys. SGA will be extension eligible, but more prominently, we are still waiting to hear on an extension for Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. They'll be like way above the second apron, but as far as like Jalen Williams, at least Jay Will, do you think this is just more so like an asset play where this is a nice deal, they could trade him later, or can he potentially stick around for the long run?
I mean, it's insurance, right? Because we don't think Hartenstein's going to be on the team beyond next season, given his team option. And they don't know if Thomas Sorber is going to be ready yet by then. So it's nice to just have him around. And I think you could trade him at that number pretty easily.
Yeah.
I think he's like an above average backup center. He just happens to play for the Thunder, where it's so much harder to get on the court. I also just want to ask, this makes 5 of their 15 players guys that they've used the team option restricted free agency trick on. That would be Dort, Joe, Wiggins, Williams, and now AJ Mitchell. That's a third of their team that they've cost controlled through restricted free agency. And I bring this up because today the Sacramento Kings did the opposite with Keon Ellis, who they had this similar team option on. They could have made him a restricted free agent and re-signed him at a like leveraged lower team friendly number. Instead, they decided to keep him at basically the minimum because they're trying to carve out enough money to go sign Dennis Schroeder. And look, that's great. That's the difference between 39 wins and 44 wins, or like even that's probably a little bit generous. But now you're either going to pay Keon Ellis more in the subsequent years, or you're going to lose him in unrestricted free agency. So I just wanted to point this out as a difference between a good organization and a bad organization, because whenever Sam Presti has this exact dilemma, this is what he does. And the Kings looked at the Presti model and said, no, Sam, we got this. We're okay. We don't need to do what the Thunder do.
I'll push back on this one a little bit. Like, I like Keon Ellis. He's a good player, but I like, what are they risking as long as they can extend him? Like, what are they risking him in terms of like the type of player he can develop into this season where they'll regret having locked them up? Because
do you see what's happening with Nickeil Alexander-Walker right now? Where every team in the NBA is falling all over themselves to throw full mid-levels at him. The Pistons carving out cap space. The Hawks using this giant trade exception. Like, Keon Ellis, but very similar kind of player. If he gets restricted free agency next offseason, he's going to go through the same thing, and a good team is going to steal him away.
Yeah, but it took Nickeil Alexander-Walker some time. He also has the aura of 2 Western Conference Finals runs where he contributed to that. I don't think he's quite there yet. Like I think it's like kind of a neutral move where they could still take care of him. He'll be extension eligible starting in like February. Like, you can give him up to the veteran extension maximum, which is like 18-20 million. I don't think he's going to get that much, but I'm just saying that, like, yes, he is at risk of becoming an unrestricted free agent, but I think right now with the Kings' uncertainty, they have such a high payroll. I think it's fine. It's defensible. Lock him in, and they could extend him later. If they fail to do that, then that's the problem.
Even if you do extend him, number one, you don't have the leverage of restricted free agency to keep his price down. And number two, you don't get to balance this year with the future years. You're getting the discount now. I would rather use that season to spread the money you're giving him, even if it's the same money, over an extra year. So I think this is just going to end with them paying him more in the future than they needed to. That's all. You're probably going to keep him. I think there's a chance that you lose him because he's pretty desirable. But I think ultimately they keep him. They're just going to end up keeping him in a way that costs them more money down the line. And I just don't think preserving money for Dennis Schroeder to chase a play-in seed, like, that doesn't make much of a difference to me.
Yeah. I think they could have gone either way with this. I'm okay with it the way they went about it. I'm okay with it if they extended him already. That's everything. I think there may be some other things, but as far as the big stuff, Sam, I think we're good. Any closing thoughts?
I think we hit everything. Not gonna lie, I wish this Ayton thing would have taken another day or two. I wanted to milk more out of the LeBron stuff. I'm still gonna write it tonight, just because we don't know what LeBron would think of Ayton. So I'll still write that tonight, but that might have a short shelf life. Yeah, I wish this would have taken an extra day, but yeah.
Everyone, keep an eye on for what Sam's got coming out for CBS Sports. He's probably going to, he's going to have something on the LeBron tiers, the Deandre Ayton teams. Follow him on Twitter at Sam Quinn CBS. Follow me. My name, Yossi Goslin, on Twitter and Blue Sky. I've been reacting to all the transactions with instant salary cap analysis, nice graphics to show where your team is in relation to the aprons, all that good stuff, what they can and can't do. Thanks for everyone for supporting Third Apron. It's been a great 2 months, just covering the entire lead up to the off season. A lot of written work, a lot of podcasts, a lot of mock off seasons. It's been fun, and I'm excited to see what's next, but also just cover the actual free agency over the next week, 2 weeks. It'll be a lot of fun. Thanks for supporting me, everybody. I am going to be streaming tomorrow during free agency. It'll be more or less kind of like if you saw my draft stream, where I'm just kind of like, I'm not going to be like, I'll just kind of be reacting. I'll be trying to do math, updating cap sheets. But if assuming big stuff happens, then you get to see me break it down live with the sheets on the screen, like I just did in this podcast. And just stay tuned. We'll be pretty active this week. A lot more stuff. Sam I'm sure we'll be back together to talk more about all the developments, all the moves that happen. Thanks, everyone.